Hello, I'm Judy Stiles. Thank you for joining us this week on Newsmakers. Well, today we're focusing on highway safety, a topic you hear a lot about, especially during the holidays, but it's a year-round concern. And joining me, representatives of two agencies here in the state of Missouri playing a key role in keeping us safe on the highways, the Missouri Department of Transportation, Joe Rickman, and the Missouri State Highway Patrol, Sergeant John Lueckenhoff. Thank you very much for being here today.
Well, thank you for having us.
You are both very involved, and I know you're involved here regionally in an organization trying to make sure people are safe on the highways. Year-round concern, I guess, from the Highway Patrol perspective. You're on the roads all the time. Have you seen an increased need to be concerned?
Absolutely. Over the last couple of years, we've not only seen an increase in just regular traffic crashes, but unfortunately, we've seen a drastic increase in fatalities. We recognize that with low gas prices the way they are nationwide, we've got a lot more people traveling, and obviously, just basic math. If you have more cars on the road, there's more opportunities to have those traffic crashes and unfortunately to have the serious injuries and fatalities.
And Joe, you're with the Transportation Department, but you work with a safety coalition.
Yeah, I also head up the Regional Coalition for Roadway Safety. It's a Missouri-based volunteer group. We're very active in Southwest Missouri. We started back in 2005. And we've been pretty successful, but like the sergeant said, the last couple of years we've seen things kind of go in the other direction, and that's very unfortunate. Just so folks know, back in 2005, when the state decided to put together a statewide coalition to attack fatalities in Missouri, there were 1,257 that year in the state. We've been down almost to 800 in the mid 800 range, hoping to get down to 700 at some point. Regionally, we started at 261 in 2006. Our best year was 2012. We got down to 143. So, and I'm sorry, I think I said 206. It's actually 261. So we've almost cut ours in half. Here in Southwest Missouri, but unfortunately last year and this year is not looking so good.
So the trend's going in the other direction now. When you look at statistics then, and as we record this program, 2 months or so in the year, you're seeing quite an increase already the first part of the year?
Oh yeah, I mean through February 21st, we've experienced 29 fatalities in the 21 county area that's the MoDOT Southwest region. Just as an idea, we had 16 this same time last year, and last year was not a good year. Our 3-year average was about 14 just prior, so we're more than double that, and our 5-year average was about 15 or 16. So not a good start at all, and I'd like to tell you it's because of bad weather, but the truth of the matter is we really have more fatalities during really good weather than we do in bad weather.
I think that's because people become overconfident. The road's clear. I have nothing to worry about.
My opinion, I think when the weather's nice, everybody's out. Weather's, like we said, gas is cheap. Sun's shining. It's been fairly warm. We're even seeing a lot of bicycles, motorcycles, pedestrians that traditionally this time of year you might not see that, just because there might be snow on the ground and it could be cold and nasty. So, even when you look at the whole year, our bad months typically are June, July, August, and through about mid-September.
The summer travel season.
Absolutely.
Right. Well, when you talk about serving the district, of course, you have separations for the state and Highway Patrol as well as the Highway Department. But we're talking about the Joplin, Springfield, the counties in this corner of the state for our viewers.
Predominantly, our region actually goes all the way up into Bates, Henry, and Benton counties. So those 3 counties are outside of Troop D, which the sergeant's responsible for. So we've got all of Troop D plus those 3 counties to the north. So we've got from, like I said, Butler area, Clinton area, Warsaw area, pretty much straight down through Buffalo, Springfield, Branson, all the way to the state line, to Arkansas state line, Joplin area. So it's a big area, about 970,000 residents. Covers 21 counties, like I said. So it's a lot of roads, 6,600 miles of state highway. But it's a good area. We enjoy. That's why we live here. And like I said, we've worked hard to get numbers down. Unfortunately, what I'm still seeing, and I'll let the sergeant speak to what he sees in the field, but a lot of these are still seatbelt related. Folks just refusing to wear a seatbelt, and a lot of crashes aren't even on the state highway system. They're on county roads, city streets, any public roadway counts. And the patrol archives all that data. So even though a city or county may work the crash, the highway patrol is by state statute, is the repository of all crash information. So we count all of them. Doesn't matter.
Are on the highway
but the trend, in all honesty, last year when we saw a big spike, we only had one more fatality on the state highway system last year than the previous year. The other 36 or 7, I can't remember the exact number, were all what we call off system. They were county roads, city streets.
So when you say highways, you're not talking just Interstate 44. You're covering a lot of those side roads.
Absolutely. By definition in the state of Missouri, a highway is any public thoroughfare. So, jurisdictionally, the Highway Patrol works, whether it's an interstate, a numbered highway, a lettered highway, a county road, whatever the case may be. The cities have their jurisdiction within the city, and primarily, as Joe mentioned, they take care of that crash reporting. But as he said, last year I think the number was at 63% of our fatalities were not wearing seatbelts, and the statistics show us that when they look at the type of injuries that are sustained and they evaluate these crashes, 50% of those people, their lives could have been saved by simply buckling up, simply staying within their seatbelt. So, if you take the total number of crashes and 63% of them are unbuckled, you add that 50% of those back in, that's saving, that's hundreds of lives. Not even to mention the lifelong serious injuries that people are sustaining by not wearing their seatbelts. And it's such a simple thing to do. You get in your car, it takes about a second and a half, 2 seconds, and you're buckled in. And it's the most critical safety device in your vehicle. Modern cars with the anti-lock brakes and power steering and airbags and all these types of things are wonderful. But we know the seatbelt itself is the #1 safety device that's in your car.
Help people out. Well, I know we have a short video that you provided for us that talks about seatbelts. It's a message that we've been hearing for years, but I'd like to share this video with the audience because it gives us another perspective of the importance of seatbelts. So let's pause right here and see if we can play the video about seatbelts and buckling up.
During the last 5 years in Missouri, over 50,000 people who were in severe crashes had the opportunity to buckle up, but only 75% of the people wore their seatbelt. 3,025 people died. People who were unbuckled died at a rate 6 times higher than those who wore their seatbelts. We wondered what would happen if the seatbelt usage increased by just 5%. Well, over 2,300 more people would have been buckled, and an estimated 2,730 people would have died over 5 years. While that number is still tragic, it is 295 fewer deaths than before, 295 lives, 295 mothers, fathers, sisters, and brothers that could have been saved. Help change the numbers. No one should die because of something so simple.
As we can see by that video, the impact of the numbers and putting the people, mothers and fathers. Is there any trend of people is there a stereotype on who doesn't wear their seatbelt, or is it across all ages and generations?
It really varies county to county. Just to be frank, in the more rural counties, teenage boys and males in pickup trucks, they don't wear seatbelts. And a pickup, we used to have a video that we played all the time called "Pickups Rock, They Also Roll." Right. They're a big vehicle, and as long as you're buckled in them, they're quite safe. They're also top heavy. They're easy to turn over, and if you don't have your seatbelt on, you get ejected, and either the vehicle will roll over you, or you're going to fly into the ground, to a tree, to something else. And I think that's why, unfortunately, we're seeing some of these, or a lot of the increases, even on lower speed county roads. I mean, not to say they're not driving them fast, but a lot of these county roads are 40, 45 miles an hour, and yet we're seeing a huge increase in fatalities on them. So, it's the single most simple, easy, zero cost thing you can do to protect yourself. And it may not be you, it may be the other driver. We talk about near crashes a lot in what I do. I remind people, you drive a 2-lane road, every single car you meet is a near head-on crash.
Because they're going past you.
You're
just a few
putting
feet.
you and your family or whoever's with you's life you're trusting that that other vehicle is going to do what it's supposed to do. And within a thousandth of a second or so, right at that last minute, if they mess up, it can all be over. So, even if you think you're an outstanding driver or it's not going to happen to me, you don't know that. And so, I always tell folks, I hear people say they're uncomfortable, whatever, they wrinkle my clothes. You can't imagine the excuses we hear. And I look at the sergeant here, and he's got on all his gear, and his tool belt, and his pistol, and they manage to wear theirs.
They can still put the seatbelt on.
And they can get out of a car just as fast as I can. I mean,
absolutely.
If you work at it, it's amazing to watch those guys with all that stuff on get in and out of a car. And to me, it's like, well, if they can do it, anybody can do it. And it's really easy. It's a habit, and it's one of those things you kind of got to force yourself to do. I'm old enough to have grown up when we didn't wear them. I mean, I didn't know anybody that wore one.
Sometimes they didn't even have them in the cars in the early days, right?
It didn't take me very long reading fatal crash reports, and I kind of put two and two together and thought, you know what, that's kind of foolish. And so that's the biggest thing I think we can push. Obviously, texting's a huge issue right now. Everybody has a phone. Everybody has a smartphone. Used to, we'd see people with a newspaper in their hand and shaving if it was a guy or a lady putting on her makeup or whatever. Still see that, but they also now have a smartphone in one hand or the computer in the seat.
So distractions are a big factor.
Unbelievable amount of distractions. I saw half a dozen on the way down here today from Springfield that just scared me to death. And, so if you're not belted and you're distracted and you're probably speeding because you're not paying attention, it's a recipe for disaster.
So all these things add up, and you see these things. And
that's right now that's probably the biggest presentation that I do the most frequently is I'm attending schools and we're talking about distracted driving. Just like Joe said, it's not just the smartphone; it's the radio in the car, the passengers. I worked the road in Berry County for 20 years, and I kind of had a personal saying when I went to some of these crashes that you spill your drink in your car and you crash your car.
It's reaching over for it.
Absolutely, and just simple things like that people really don't think about, and that's the tragedy when myself or a fellow trooper, when we have to go to that house and we have to knock on that door and we have to tell someone that their loved one's not coming home, and we know what the cause of it was. And ultimately that person wants to know. They ask that question, well, what happened?
Right.
Well, we discovered that they were texting and driving. They didn't have their seatbelt on. Or, they were having an argument in the car and they crossed the center line. Things like that are avoidable. But then when you compound that with you don't buckle that seatbelt, everyone is possible to have some sort of a distraction in the car at any time. I'm a parent. I used to have little kids in the back seat, and you have those kind of things. But if you're not going to buckle your seatbelt and give yourself a chance to survive your mistake, then you're just compounding the situation.
And so driving defensively, and as you mentioned, watching out for the other guy as well, that seatbelt's giving you that little extra,
Absolutely.
And in town as well as out on the open highway. You mentioned it within city limits, and we've heard, unfortunately, in Joplin of fatal accidents right in the middle of town and things like that.
Yeah, and I think a misunderstanding is that it takes a lot of speed for a crash to be a serious injury or fatal. I forget what you guys, I think the crash team one time told me that the lowest speed fatality that they've documented is about 12 miles an hour. So, and that's proven. I'm an accident reconstructionist by trade myself, and so they don't make that statement unless there's enough evidence at the scene that they can put pretty much an exact speed on that car. And so you think about that's parking lot speed. It's 15
you think, I'm safe, I'm not going fast,
here,
right?
I can assure you most of the kids don't drive 15 on campus.
I did a public service announcement over the summertime, and one of the things that we mentioned during that announcement is that a 30-mile-an-hour crash, unbelted, is the equivalent of falling 3 stories and hitting the ground.
Yeah, just doing a belly flop.
That's 30 miles an hour. No one drives in Joplin at 30 miles an hour. I mean,
look at all the city streets. They're going faster than that.
Your city streets are, the slowest ones are limited probably at 20 to 25, but the majority of your city streets are in that 35, 40, 45 miles per hour range. And so that 30-mile-an-hour crash, if you think, who would jump off of a building at 3 stories high?
And
No one.
So the seatbelt being the big impact.
Absolutely.
Outreach programs that you're doing, you go to area schools. Is there a certain age that you try to target? Do you start with them young? Do you try to get the
The
message?
programs that I do are anywhere from small kids talking about when they're in the vehicle, buckling their belt properly, sitting in their booster seats like they should, encouraging the little ones to remind the adults in the car to wear their
A little
seatbelts.
pressure from the kids. Mom, put your seatbelt on.
Absolutely. We really target the young drivers as far as our true driving presentations, and I take along a couple of devices that I have, a seatbelt convincer, which is a device that we can actually put the student in and they feel what a 4 to 5 mile an hour crash feels like while they're buckled. And then I also have what's called a rollover simulator, and it's a device that has life-size dummies in it, and I can actually turn that over and it show them, if you have your seatbelt on, you stay in it. If you don't have your seatbelt on, and they get to see the dummy actually come out and see what that looks like. So, I target all ages when it comes to the safety topics about the motor vehicle things, but the 16 to 24-year-olds, that's the ones like Joe was mentioning. That's the ones that aren't wearing their seatbelts.
That's the toughest generation or age to work with in many cases.
It's not the only one. I don't want to make a misstatement there. I mean, the biggest increase last year in fatalities was 65 plus.
So senior citizens on the other end.
So, we've all heard about baby boomers. There's more and more and more. I'm at the very youngest age of that group, so I'm one of them. But so 50 plus, there's a huge influx of folks that are either retiring, getting ready to retire, or have already retired out there. This is a very, it's a popular area for folks to come to retire.
It's part of the country. People are going to move here.
Pretty country. Cost of living's fairly cheap. Lots of lakes, lots of scenery to go see. So we've got a lot of folks that either stay here or actually move in here, especially from the coastal areas, because it's a lot more affordable. So we've got lots and lots and lots of they're not really senior citizens, but older,
experienced people,
experienced drivers, and honestly, folks that should know better. But again, when we looked at the crash data from last year, especially the fatalities, the biggest increase in age was 65 plus. I mean, it was a lot. It was like 37 more people. I mean, that's huge. Yeah. And unbuckled still was about 64%, which is enormous. And again, and it was off the state system. So it's not out here on the interstate, or when I was a kid, I remember my granddad, he'd put a seatbelt on when he went on a big trip because he was going to be away from home. That's not where crashes happen normally.
Buckle up while you're in town as well as you're.
Most people are involved in a crash within about 2-3 miles of their house. I've been involved in 3 in the last 5 years, and the furthest one away from my house is just over 2.2 miles. So, that's where you are most of the time. So, I guess the thing I want to put, it doesn't matter what age you are. A 16-year-old is inexperienced. They're easily distracted. They don't put a seatbelt on, we got a problem. Because like I said, they're more likely to have that crash. Right. But if you're in that 55, 60, 65-year-old age group and older, you're not as tough as you used to be. I'm not as tough as I used to be.
You get tired easier, those long trips take longer.
Your body just cannot, it's just pure medical documented proof that your body cannot absorb the same kind of energy. Your bones don't flex like they used to. You don't recover as easily. So again, if you're in that age group, you don't put your seatbelt on, it's a recipe for disaster. It does not take a high-speed crash if you hit your head on the A-pillar of a car, which is the brace by the windows, or the steering wheel, or even, frankly, if you get crooked and the airbag hits you wrong, you can have serious life-changing injuries if it doesn't kill you. So, we really stretch even down to pre-K. We've got a lady in our coalition who's from McDonald County. I won't embarrass her, mention her name, but we have a program called Buckle Buddy, and it's a little dinosaur, and we go into 4- and 5-year-olds up through like first and second graders and talk to them using kind of a toy, but in a suit they wear. Talk to them about seatbelt stuff, because you got to start building habits when they're real little, and then we hit them harder when they're middle age or middle school to high school, I've even been out to senior centers and talked.
Right.
I mean, because those individuals grew up in a time when we didn't wear seatbelts.
So they had to learn a new habit.
So
they
it's
never had.
something they have to consciously make themselves do. So I would strongly urge anybody, I don't care what age you are, put the thing on. Just get in the habit of doing it. It's really not that big a deal. Once you do it, you kind of feel bad without it. You feel like you're going to slide around in your seat. But and that's the biggest thing I think we can push.
Biggest message. Now, Sergeant, some people might be wondering about the laws concerning seatbelts and so forth. You hear, well, there's a law, you have to wear it, or it's back seat. What kind of answers do you have to those type of questions?
Well,
in Missouri?
we do have a seatbelt law in the state of Missouri, and it states that in a passenger car or pickup truck licensed for 6,000 pounds or below, that all of those are considered passenger carrying vehicles, and you must wear a seatbelt while you're in that vehicle. Trucks licensed for heavier than that, it's not required. Certainly, young people, they all have to wear their seatbelts in any vehicle. The non-seatbelt wearing only applies to adults. But the unfortunate side of that is that the seatbelt law itself, it doesn't have a whole lot of teeth in it. It's not a very large fine. And the seatbelt law itself is enforced in conjunction with other violations. So, if I stop a violator for exceeding the speed limit or not wearing or not having registration or something, and I determine that they're not wearing their seatbelt, that's when I can enforce. That
becomes the enforcement of that seatbelt.
That's when I can enforce that law. So.
What about texting? You mentioned texting. So a lot of states have different rules regarding texting.
And currently we do have a texting law. It applies to 21-year-olds and below. So anyone that is the age of 21 or less, it is illegal in the state of Missouri to text and drive. That in and of itself is somewhat of an interesting phenomenon because, in comparative terms, my 19, 22, and 23-year-old children can text about 5 times as fast as I can.
Not even looking at the phone, right?
and so
probably behind their back.
Saying that it's or any indication that it's safer for me as an adult to text and drive than it is for a child it's not true. It's and that's why I alluded to earlier. It's not just texting.
There's a lot of distractions.
Sure. Texting is the big thing now, and I think it's wonderful that the state of Missouri is working towards getting that stopped, and I'm very hopeful that does happen. The Highway Patrol supports anything that's going to make it safer for people on the roadways, but no. If you're 21 or below and you're texting, you are violating state law. So
that's an actual law you're violating.
Absolutely.
Now, there's a lot of ways that you're getting the word out visiting the schools. I know when you travel the highways, Interstate 44, you have message boards. And I recently drove to St. Louis, and they have those little signs that say, remember to buckle up, or I think someone said, someone loves you, buckle up. You have those messages. You're trying to subtly get that to the drivers as they're crossing the state.
The primary purpose of those, so I don't get 100 phone calls after this show airs, the primary function of those is out there for when we do have some kind of an incident on the highway.
Right.
So if there's a crash or a broken down vehicle or snow, ice, whatever it may be that's impacting traffic flow, that's why we installed those years ago. But what we found is, fortunately, that doesn't happen all that often. So they're just sitting there. So then, you start wondering, okay, we got all this investment. It's a great tool when we need it, but what else can we do with it? And that's really where the state went with the idea of, okay, if we're going to put messages out there, let's make them safety related. Not all are driving, they're just vehicle related.
Right.
We'll have things reminding you not to put or leave your vehicle or kid in your vehicle, in the heat or whatever.
Summer, right.
But so we kind of started generic, and then we got to thinking about it. Well, what if we made them a little more catchy? And so some of them I think have been pretty neat. Some of them we get a little backlash on every once in a while, but we do get a lot of input from the public, which means they notice them and they remember them. And that's really what we're after, is trying to get your attention, trying to get you to pay attention to it, maybe even be waiting for the next one to kind of see what it says. So trying to just use any means we can to encourage folks to make good choices, because that's really all it's about. It's paying attention, driving appropriate speeds, wearing your seatbelt, don't drink and drive. All those things
basic
that
messages we've heard for years.
Yeah,
right.
it's really back to the same basics.
Well, if people want information, I know we have on the screen right now your website for the Department of Transportation. You have a website, they have phone numbers to call. Even just checking road conditions, in the wintertime especially, if you're going to drive across the state, it's nice here, you're heading to the other side of the state where it's not.
Well, anytime during the year. We put all of our big scheduled work zones on there, on that traveler information map. Flooding, we had a huge problem.
December we had the shutting the roads, right?
That's on there. Obviously, in snow and ice, we have our winter weather conditions. There's live camera feeds you can go to. In the Springfield area, you'll actually get full video. We're kind of setting the mark on that. Proud of that little endeavor. And that's coming for the whole state. Most of it's still image, but it refreshes pretty frequently. So you can see what the road condition looks like. You can see what our maintenance folks are telling our TMC, or Transportation Management Center operators, kind of worst case scenario, because if you think about it, if you got a 2-mile stretch that's really slick, we can't say the road's overall is good, because we may pick a 10 or 20 mile segment that we have to mark as bad. But it's our attempt to help give you good information. You can make better decisions, choose when to go or not go. And I take a lot of phone calls, and I encourage people, if it's not an emergency and the conditions are really bad, don't go.
Stay home. And Sergeant, I know the Highway Patrol, you have a emergency number of people run into problems, star 55?
Yes, ma'am. Star 55 will always get you to the nearest troop headquarters. The difference between that and obviously 911 works on your cell phone for reporting emergencies also. The advantage of using the Star 55 is because the Highway Patrol is primarily going to be the agency that responds to assist you, whether it's because you're broke down, you've been involved in an accident, or you need to report something on the highway, if there's debris on the road or someone driving poorly. So what Star 55 does is it gets you directly to our dispatch, who then calls a trooper. Instead of dialing 911 and getting a sheriff's department who then forwards it to the Highway Patrol, and then the Highway Patrol puts it out. So it just it cuts out the middleman, gets you that direct link. I would like to add to what Joe said in regards to, whether it's the signs, whether it's one of the troopers doing enforcement, whether it's a MoDOT worker, we're doing all of these things ultimately to save lives. We're doing all of these things because we do care about the people that are traveling through our state, that are coming to our state, and that live here. Joe mentioned earlier that our region, we have over 900,000 residents, but we also have Table Rock Lake and Branson.
People traveling through here.
How many people that aren't residents come see us?
Right.
And so, all of this ultimately is, our goal is to save lives.
Keep everyone safe.
Absolutely.
Right. Well, I'd like to thank both of you for being on this program today and sharing information with our audience.
Thank you for having us.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
And I'd like to thank you for tuning in this week for Newsmakers. I'm Judy Stiles. I'll see you again next week.